My name is Janet, and I am 56 years old. For 30 years, I raised my son Brian alone after my husband passed away. I gave him everything I had worked, 2 jobs, sacrificed my own dreams so he could have his. When he told me he was getting married, I was overjoyed. I thought this would be the happiest day of my life, but his bride had other plans for me. She seated me at the kitchen table at the wedding like I was nobody. So the next day, I did something that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever felt invisible to someone you love, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stay with me, because what I did next changed everything. I met my husband David when I was 23 years old in Chicago, Illinois. We fell in love quickly, got married 2 years later, and welcomed our son Brian when I was 27. Life was beautiful. We had dreams of growing old together, watching our son grow up, maybe having grandchildren someday. But fate had different plans. When Brian was only 6 years old, David died in a car accident on a rainy October night. One moment I had a husband, a partner, a future. The next moment, I was a widow with a small child and a mortgage I could barely afford. I made a decision that night at the hospital. I would give Brian the best life I could, no matter what it took. I worked as an administrative assistant during the day and did freelance bookkeeping at night after Brian went to bed. I rarely slept more than 5 hours. I never bought new clothes for myself. I drove the same old car for 15 years. Every penny went to Brian's education, his activities, his future. I sent him to a good private school, paid for summer camps where he learned to play tennis and swim, saved for his college fund. When Brian graduated from high school, he got into Northwestern University. I was so proud I cried for an hour. He studied business, made the dean's list every semester, joined clubs, made friends. I visited him once a month, bringing home-cooked meals in containers because I knew college food was terrible. After graduation, he got a job at a prestigious consulting firm in Boston. He was living the life I had always dreamed for him. Brian and I stayed close, even with the distance. He called me every Sunday without fail. We talked about his work, his life, his goals. He came home to Chicago every few months. I thought nothing could ever come between us. I was his mother, his only parent, the person who had been there through everything. I believed our bond was unbreakable. 2 years ago, everything began to change. Brian called one evening, his voice bubbling with excitement. He told me he had met someone special. Her name was Stephanie Morrison. She was 29, worked in marketing, and Brian said she was amazing. I was thrilled for him. I asked when I could meet her. He promised to bring her home for Thanksgiving. That Thanksgiving, I cleaned my apartment until it sparkled. I cooked all of Brian's favorite dishes, roast turkey, mashed potatoes with extra butter, the way he liked them, green bean casserole, pumpkin pie from scratch. I wore my best dress and put on makeup. I wanted to make a good impression on the woman my son loved. When they arrived, I opened the door with a huge smile. Stephanie was beautiful, I had to admit. She was tall and elegant, with perfectly styled dark hair and expensive clothes. But when I hugged her, she stood stiff, barely returning the embrace. During dinner, she spoke mostly to Brian, answered my questions with short, polite responses. When I asked about her family, she said her parents lived in Connecticut and changed the subject. I tried to talk about her work, her interests, anything to connect with her. She smiled but kept a distance. After they left, I felt uneasy. I told myself she was probably just nervous about meeting her boyfriend's mother. Some people take time to warm up. I decided to be patient. Over the next months, I tried everything to build a relationship with Stephanie. I sent her text messages asking how she was doing. She replied with 1 or 2 words, sometimes not at all. For her birthday in March, I mailed her a beautiful scarf I had saved up to buy. I never received a thank you note, not even a text. When I asked Brian about it, he said Stephanie had been busy with a big project at work. I swallowed my hurt feelings and told myself to give her more time. Christmas came. Brian and Stephanie visited again. This time, Stephanie spent most of the visit on her phone talking to her mother, Patricia. I overheard her laughing and chatting warmly with Patricia, making plans for after the holidays. With me, she remained distant and formal. When I suggested cooking Brian's favorite Christmas breakfast, Stephanie said she preferred we all go out to eat instead. Brian agreed with her immediately. I felt like an outsider in my own home. On Christmas morning, I gave them both gifts. For Brian, a nice watch he had mentioned wanting. For Stephanie, an expensive set of bath products I thought she might enjoy. Stephanie opened it, said a quick thank you, and set it aside. She gave me a generic gift card to a department store, the kind you grab at the last minute. I smiled and thanked her, but inside I felt the message loud and clear. I was not important to her. Still, I kept trying. I told myself that when they got married, things would get better. She would see me as family then. She would understand how much I loved Brian and accept me. I held on to that hope like a lifeline. I was wrong. Things were about to get so much worse, and I had no idea what was coming. In April, Brian called with the news I had been waiting for. He had proposed to Stephanie, and she had said yes. They were getting married in September in Boston. I was overjoyed. I congratulated him, told him how happy I was, how much I looked forward to the wedding. Brian sounded genuinely happy, and hearing his joy made everything worth it. A few weeks later, the wedding planning began. Stephanie and her mother, Patricia, took charge of everything. I called Brian and asked if there was anything I could help with, any way I could contribute. He said Stephanie and Patricia had it all under control, but he would let me know if they needed anything. I felt a small sting of rejection, but pushed it aside. Maybe the bride's family traditionally handled the planning. I did not want to overstep. Months passed. I heard about the wedding venue, the flowers, the dress, all through Brian's occasional updates. Nobody asked for my opinion on anything. Not the color scheme, not the menu, not the music. I was being politely excluded from my own son's wedding preparations. Each time I offered to help, I was told everything was handled. I started to feel like a guest rather than the groom's mother. In June, I decided to do something meaningful. I called Brian and told him I wanted to give him and Stephanie a special wedding gift. He asked what I had in mind. I took a deep breath and said I wanted to pay for their honeymoon anywhere they wanted to go. There was silence on the other end, then Brian's voice filled with surprise and gratitude. He asked if I was sure, said it was a huge gift. I told him he was my only son, my everything, and I wanted him to have the best start to his marriage. Brian talked to Stephanie. They decided on the Maldives. 2 weeks at a luxury resort with overwater villas, private pools, gourmet dining spa treatments, water sports, everything they could dream of. The total cost came to $93,000. It was nearly all the savings I had left from selling my house and moving to a smaller apartment. But I did not hesitate. I contacted a travel agency called Lux Destinations. The agent, Karen, was wonderful. She helped me book everything business-class flights, the best villa at the resort. All meals included couples massages, sunset cruises, diving excursions. I put it all in my name and paid in full. Karen confirmed everything was set. She said Brian and Stephanie would have the trip of a lifetime. When I told Brian it was done, he called me crying. He said I was the best mother in the world, that he loved me so much that he could never repay me. I told him he did not need to repay me. His happiness was all I wanted. For a moment, everything felt right again. I thought maybe this gift would show Stephanie how much I cared about their future. Maybe she would finally see me as someone who loved them both. July came. Stephanie sent me an email about the wedding. It was formal and cold like a business memo. She outlined the dress code, the timeline, the location details. She signed it, Best Stephanie, as if I were a distant acquaintance. I replied warmly, saying I was looking forward to the big day. She never responded. I went shopping for my dress. I wanted to look beautiful for my son's wedding. I found a stunning navy blue gown that cost $1,200. It was more than I usually spent on myself, but this was a special occasion. I bought matching shoes and a clutch. I made an appointment at a salon for hair and makeup. I wanted everything to be perfect. August arrived. The wedding was 1 month away. I still had not been given any special role. I was not asked to help with anything. I was not invited to the bridal shower or the bachelorette party. When I asked Brian about it, he said those were just for Stephanie's close friends and family. I bit my tongue. I was not family yet, apparently. The week before the wedding, my anxiety grew. Something felt wrong. I could not shake the feeling that I was being deliberately pushed to the margins, but I told myself I was being paranoid. This was my son's wedding. Of course I mattered. Of course I would be treated with respect. I had no idea how wrong I was. The wedding day arrived. It was a Saturday in late September, perfect weather in Boston. I woke up early in my hotel room, my stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. This was the day my son would marry the woman he loved. I wanted everything to be perfect. I spent 2 hours getting ready. I did my makeup carefully, making sure every line was smooth. The salon styled my hair in soft curls. I put on my navy dress, the expensive one I had bought specifically for this day. When I looked in the mirror, I felt good. I looked good. I looked like a mother who was proud and happy to be there. I arrived at the venue around 2 in the afternoon. The estate was breathtaking. It sat on acres of manicured gardens outside Boston with white columns and sprawling lawns. Inside, crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. White roses and cream-colored orchids decorated every surface. It was elegant and expensive, exactly the kind of wedding Stephanie would want. I walked around looking for someone to tell me where to go. I saw Patricia Stephanie's mother being attended to by several staff members. They were pinning a corsage on her dress, asking if she needed anything. She looked regal in a champagne-colored gown, clearly enjoying the attention. I stood nearby waiting for someone to notice me. Nobody did. I tried to find Brian, but he was sequestered with the groomsmen getting ready. I sent him a text saying I had arrived and could not wait to see him. He replied with a heart emoji. That made me smile. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock. I followed the other guests to the outdoor garden where white chairs were arranged in neat rows. I looked for my name on the seating chart. I was in the 3rd row on the groom's side. Patricia was in the 1st row on the bride's side, front and center. I told myself this was normal. The bride's mother always got special placement. I took my seat and waited. The music started. The bridal party walked down the aisle. Then Stephanie appeared in a stunning white gown with a long train, her father Howard at her side. She looked beautiful. Brian stood at the altar, and when he saw her, his face lit up with pure love. My eyes filled with tears. My baby boy all grown up getting married. The ceremony was lovely. They exchanged vows, promised to love each other forever, kissed as husband and wife. Everyone applauded. I clapped until my hands hurt, smiling through my tears. Despite everything, I was happy for Brian. He deserved this happiness. After the ceremony, guests moved inside for the reception. I walked with everyone else toward the ballroom. At the entrance, there was a large seating chart on an easel. I searched for my name, scanning the list of tables. Table 1 was the head table bridegroom parents of the bride maid of honor, best man. Table 2 through table 15 were labeled with various family names and friend groups. I kept looking. Table 16, table 17. Finally, at the very bottom of the list, I found my name. Table 18. I stared at it, not understanding. Table 18. I walked into the ballroom to find where that was. The ballroom was enormous and beautifully decorated. The head table sat on a raised platform at the front overlooking the dance floor. Tables 1 through 15 were arranged in a semicircle facing the stage, close enough to see and hear everything. I walked past them, searching for table 18. I found it in the far back corner of the room. It was pushed against the wall, half hidden behind a decorative column and a large potted plant. It was positioned right next to the swinging doors that led to the kitchen. Every few minutes, servers rushed in and out the doors, banging. The noise from the kitchen, clatter of dishes, shouting chefs, running water, was loud even from where I stood. I looked at the place cards on the table. None of the names were familiar to me. These were not family members. These were not close friends of Brian. These were random people, distant acquaintances, maybe co-workers of Stephanie who barely made the guest list. I stood there frozen. My hands started shaking. I looked across the room at the head table where Patricia sat next to Stephanie, both of them laughing and talking. I looked at the beautiful tables near the stage filled with people who mattered. Then I looked at my table tucked away like an afterthought next to the kitchen noise. I sat down slowly. A woman next to me, someone around my age, smiled politely and introduced herself. She asked how I knew the couple. I swallowed hard and said I was the groom's mother. Her eyes widened in surprise. She said she was just a co-worker of Stephanie from her previous job, someone Stephanie barely kept in touch with. She seemed genuinely shocked that I was sitting there. Throughout the reception, I sat in that corner while servers rushed past me. I watched from a distance as Brian and Stephanie danced as they cut the cake, as they laughed with their friends. When dinner was served, I barely tasted the food. My throat was tight with humiliation. Brian stood up to give a speech. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked Patricia and Howard for welcoming him into their family and for their generous contributions to the wedding. He thanked his groomsmen. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And thanks to my mom for coming today." That was it. No mention of the $93,000 honeymoon I had paid for. No acknowledgement of everything I had done for him his entire life. Just a casual thanks for showing up. I sat there in that corner next to the banging kitchen doors, surrounded by strangers, and felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. This was how my son saw me. This was how little I mattered to him and his new wife. I was not family. I was not important. I was just someone to be thanked and forgotten. The reception continued around me. People danced and laughed. I smiled when I needed to, spoke politely to the strangers at my table, and died a little inside with every passing minute. When it finally ended at 11 o'clock, I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting so long. I did not say goodbye to anyone. Nobody would notice anyway. I walked out of that beautiful venue and got into a taxi back to my hotel. I got back to my hotel room just before midnight. My feet ached from the heels I had worn all day. I took them off and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my expensive dress. I stared at the wall, replaying everything that had just happened. Table 18, next to the kitchen, while Patricia sat at the head table like royalty. I thought about all the years I had worked myself to exhaustion for Brian, the nights I stayed up late doing bookkeeping after he went to bed so I could afford his school tuition, the times I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so he could have a hot meal, the vacations I never took so he could go to summer camp, the dreams I deferred so he could chase his. I thought about the $93,000 sitting in a travel agency account waiting to send Brian and Stephanie to paradise, money I had saved from selling the house David and I bought together, the house where I raised Brian, where every room held memories of his childhood. I sold it and moved to a small apartment so I would have something to give him for his future. And this was how he repaid me, by letting his wife treat me like I was nobody. I stood up and walked to the window. Boston's lights glittered below. I thought about tomorrow. Brian and Stephanie would fly out to the Maldives in the afternoon. They would spend 2 weeks in luxury, swimming in crystal-clear water, being pampered at the spa, dining on gourmet food, all on my dime, while I flew back to Chicago alone, humiliated and heartbroken. Something inside me shifted. It was not anger exactly. It was clarity. A cold, hard realization that I had been allowing myself to be disrespected for too long. I had made excuses for Stephanie's coldness. I had convinced myself that Brian just did not notice how she treated me. But tonight proved that he knew. He saw me sitting in that corner, and he did nothing. He said nothing. I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. I could not sleep. My mind was racing. I kept thinking about that honeymoon, that expensive, luxurious gift I had given them, a gift they did not appreciate, a gift given by someone they clearly did not respect. I opened my laptop. My hands were steady now. I found the email from Karen at Lux Destinations. I read through the booking confirmation looking for the cancellation policy. There it was in clear terms: full refund if canceled at least 48 hours before departure. I checked the time again. It was 2:15 on Sunday morning. Brian and Stephanie's flight was scheduled for 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. That was less than 14 hours away, but the policy said 48 hours before departure. I did the math. They were leaving on Sunday at 4 p.m. 48 hours before that would be Friday at 4 p.m. It was now Sunday at 2 a.m. I had missed the window. Or had I read the policy again more carefully. It said the booking could be changed or canceled up to 48 hours before departure without penalty. The departure date was listed as Monday because that was when they would arrive in the Maldives after the long flight with connections. My pulse quickened. Monday at 4 p.m. 48 hours before that was Saturday at 4 p.m. It was now Sunday at 2 a.m. I was still within the window. Barely, but I was. I sat there for a long time, my finger hovering over Karen's phone number. Part of me whispered that this was too much, too cruel. They were newlyweds. They were excited about this trip. But another part of me, a stronger part, said I deserved better. I deserved respect. And if they could not give me that, they did not deserve my generosity. I made my decision. I would wait until morning. If I still felt this way when the sun came up, I would do it. I closed my laptop and lay down in my dress, too exhausted to change. I did not sleep, but I waited. When the sun rose over Boston at 6:30, I got up. I washed my face, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat back down with my laptop. My resolve had not wavered. If anything, it had grown stronger. I picked up my phone and dialed Karen's number. It rang 3 times before she answered. "Good morning, this is Karen from Lux Destinations. How can I help you?" My voice was calm and steady. "This is Janet Thompson. I booked a Maldives honeymoon for my son Brian Thompson and his wife Stephanie." "Yes, Mrs. Thompson. Is everything all right? They are traveling today, correct?" "I need to cancel the entire booking." There was a pause. "Cancel, but they are flying out this afternoon." "I understand. I am within the cancellation window according to your policy. Please proceed with the cancellation." Karen sounded concerned. "May I ask if there is a problem? Is someone ill?" "Personal reasons. I would prefer not to discuss it. Please just cancel the reservation and process the refund." Another pause. Then Karen said, "Of course. Let me pull up the booking. This will take just a moment." I waited, listening to her type on her keyboard. My heart was pounding, but I did not change my mind. "All right, Mrs. Thompson. I have canceled the entire package. The flights, the resort, all activities and meals. Everything has been removed from the system. You will receive a full refund of $93,000 within 7 to 10 business days." "Thank you, Karen. May I ask one more time if you are certain this is their honeymoon?" "I am absolutely certain. Thank you for your help." I hung up. I sat there in the quiet hotel room holding my phone. It was done. In a few hours, when Brian and Stephanie arrived at the airport, they would discover their dream honeymoon no longer existed, and they would know exactly who was responsible. I packed my bag and checked out of the hotel. I took a taxi to the airport and caught the first flight back to Chicago. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at Boston disappearing below me. I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I had stood up for myself. For the first time, I had refused to accept being treated as less than I deserved. I arrived back in Chicago around noon on Sunday. My apartment felt quiet and peaceful after the chaos of the wedding weekend. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my couch looking out at the city. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. I knew it would not stay that way for long. At 3 o'clock, my phone started ringing. Brian's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it, letting it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. It went to voicemail. Immediately it started ringing again. I did not answer. Over the next hour, Brian called 15 times. I ignored every call. At 4 o'clock, I knew they would be at the airport by now. They would have checked in or tried to. They would have been told there was no reservation, no flights, no resort booking, nothing. My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Mom, where have you been? I have been calling you all day." Brian's voice was frantic, almost shouting. "I have been home. What is wrong, Brian?" "What is wrong? The honeymoon is canceled. We are at the airport and they told us there is no booking. Everything is gone." "Yes, I know. I canceled it." Silence. Complete silence on the other end. I could hear airport announcements in the background, but Brian said nothing for several long seconds. You what?" "I canceled the honeymoon, Brian. I called the travel agency this morning and canceled the entire booking." "Why would you do that? Are you out of your mind?" "No, I am perfectly sane. I am just done being disrespected." "What are you talking about?" "Table 18, Brian. Your bride put me at table 18, next to the kitchen, while her mother sat at the head table like a queen." I heard him take a sharp breath. He did not respond immediately. I continued, my voice steady. "I spent $93,000 on your honeymoon. I raised you alone after your father died. I sacrificed everything for you. I worked 2 jobs so you could have a good life. And you let your wife treat me like I am nobody, like I am an inconvenience to be hidden in a corner." "Mom, it was just a seating arrangement." "No, Brian, it was not. It was a message, a clear message that I do not matter, that after everything I have done, I am just someone to be thanked in passing and forgotten." I heard a woman's voice in the background. Stephanie. She was saying something I could not make out. Then I heard her grab the phone. "Janet, you cannot do this. Do you know what you have done?" Stephanie's voice was shrill and angry. "I know exactly what I have done. I have taken back my gift." "This is insane. You are ruining our honeymoon over a table." "I am reclaiming my dignity." "Something you clearly do not understand, Stephanie. You are a bitter old woman. This is our honeymoon. We have been planning this for months. And I have been funding it with my life savings. Money I saved by selling the house where I raised my son alone. But apparently that does not earn me enough respect to sit anywhere other than the kitchen corner. You are being ridiculous. And you are being disrespectful. You have been cold to me from the moment we met. You excluded me from every part of this wedding. You made it clear I do not matter to you. So now you can spend your honeymoon somewhere you can afford on your own. Goodbye, Stephanie." I hung up. My hand was shaking now, but not from fear or regret. From adrenaline. From the rush of finally standing up for myself. I turned off my phone. I did not want to hear any more calls or read any angry texts. I sat in the silence of my apartment and felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. Real, genuine peace. Genuine. An hour later, I turned my phone back on. There were dozens of messages, angry texts from Brian and Stephanie, a furious message from Patricia calling me names I will not repeat. But there was also a text from my sister Laura. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" I texted back. "I am fine. Better than fine." "Good for you. They had no right to treat you that way." Her words made me feel validated. I was not crazy. I was not overreacting. I had been genuinely wronged, and I had every right to respond. Some of my friends sent messages too. Some supported me. A few said I had gone too far, that I should have handled it privately. I did not care what they thought. This was not about them. This was about me finally drawing a line and refusing to let anyone cross it. Over the next few days, the messages from Brian and Stephanie slowed down. I did not respond to any of them. I went about my life. I met Laura for coffee. I attended my book club. I went to yoga class. I felt lighter, freer, like a weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. The first week after the wedding, Brian did not contact me at all. I assumed he was too angry. Stephanie was probably furious. Part of me felt guilty. After all, I had canceled their honeymoon at the last minute. But every time I started to doubt myself, I remembered sitting at that table next to the kitchen, feeling invisible and unimportant. The guilt faded. The second week, I received an email from Brian. Not a phone call, an email. It was formal and cold. "Mom, Stephanie is very upset. We need to talk." I replied simply. "I am happy to talk when you are ready to listen." He did not respond. I continued with my life. Laura came over for dinner one evening. We sat at my small kitchen table eating pasta I had made, and she asked me how I was really feeling. "Honestly," I said, "I feel free. For the first time in 2 years, I do not feel like I have to walk on eggshells or make excuses for being treated poorly. I feel like I matter again." Laura reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You do matter. You always have. I am proud of you for standing up for yourself." Her support meant everything to me. In early October, Brian sent me another email. He said he was coming to Chicago and wanted to meet. I agreed. We decided to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment. The day of our meeting, I dressed carefully, not to impress him, but to feel confident. I wore comfortable jeans and a nice sweater. I put on minimal makeup. I did not need to be anyone other than myself. I arrived at the coffee shop first and ordered a tea. Brian walked in 10 minutes later. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes and his shoulders were slumped. He ordered a coffee and sat down across from me. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "Mom, why did you do it?" "I told you. I was disrespected." Stephanie did not mean anything by the seating. It was just logistics. I looked at him carefully. "Brian, do you really believe that table 18 was in the back corner next to the kitchen? Her mother sat at the head table in a place of honor. That was not logistics. That was a deliberate choice." He looked down at his coffee. He did not argue. I continued. "I have tried to connect with Stephanie for 2 years. She has been cold and distant with me the entire time. I accepted it because I did not want to make your life difficult. But the wedding was the final straw. I paid $93,000 for your honeymoon, and I could not even get a decent seat at your wedding." I know you have sacrificed a lot for me. Then why did you let her do that to me? Why did you not say anything? I did not know about the seating until the day of the wedding. By then it was too late to change anything. You could have said something during your speech. You could have acknowledged what I did for you, but you just said thanks for coming like I was a random guest. Brian put his head in his hands. I know. I messed up. I should have stood up for you. Yes, you should have. He looked up at me, his eyes red. I am sorry, Mom. I really am. I got so caught up in making Stephanie happy that I forgot about you. That was wrong. His apology was sincere. I could see that. But it did not erase what had happened. Brian, I love you. You are my son, and nothing will ever change that. But I will not accept being treated this way anymore. Not by Stephanie, and not by you. What do you want me to do? I want you to talk to your wife. I want her to understand that I am your mother and I deserve respect. If she cannot do that, then she and I will not have a relationship, and you will have to decide how you want to handle that. You are asking me to choose between you and my wife. No, I am asking you to demand that your wife treat your mother with basic decency. There is a difference. Brian was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. I will talk to her, but I cannot promise anything. That is all I ask. We finished our coffee in silence. When we stood to leave, Brian hugged me. It was brief, but it was genuine. As I watched him walk away, I wondered if things would ever be the same between us. Probably not. But maybe they could be better. Maybe this was what we both needed. A hard reset. A reminder that love also requires respect. November arrived. The leaves in Chicago turned gold and red before falling. I kept myself busy. I joined a new book club at the library. I started taking watercolor painting classes on Thursday evenings. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected while trying so hard to please Stephanie. One evening in mid-November, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Stephanie. I stared at it in surprise. Stephanie had never called me directly before. Ever. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Janet, it is Stephanie. Her voice was stiff, but not hostile. Hello, Stephanie. There was a pause. Then she said, I owe you an apology. The seating at the wedding was wrong. I was thoughtless and rude. I am sorry. I was genuinely surprised. Thank you for saying that. Brian and I have been talking a lot. He helped me understand how much you have done for him for us. I did not appreciate it before. I should have. I appreciate you acknowledging that. I would like to start over, if you are willing. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no to protect myself from more hurt, but another part of me wanted to believe people could change, that relationships could be repaired. I am willing to try, Stephanie, but it needs to be genuine. I need to feel like I matter to you, not just because Brian told you to be nice to me. I understand. It will be genuine. I promise. We talked for a few more minutes. It was awkward but honest. When we hung up, I felt cautiously optimistic. 2 weeks later, Stephanie called again, this time to invite me to Boston for Thanksgiving. She said she and Brian wanted me there, that it would mean a lot to them. I accepted. Thanksgiving in Boston was different. Stephanie was warmer, more open. She asked about my life, my hobbies, my friends. She showed me around their apartment. She introduced me to her parents, Patricia and Howard, with genuine respect. Patricia was polite to me this time, though still somewhat reserved. It was progress. During dinner, Brian stood up to make a toast. He thanked everyone for coming. Then he looked at me and said, I especially want to thank my mom. She has sacrificed more for me than I can ever repay. She is the strongest woman I know, and I am grateful for her every single day. My eyes filled with tears. Stephanie reached over and squeezed my hand. It was not perfect. There were still awkward moments, but it was better, so much better than before. Over the next months, Stephanie and I built a new relationship. We texted regularly. She sent me photos of things she thought I would like. We had video calls where we just talked about life. It was slow, but it was real. One day in February, Stephanie called and said, Janet, I need to tell you something. I have been thinking a lot about what happened, about how I treated you. I was jealous. Jealous of what? Of your relationship with Brian. He talks about you with so much love and respect. I felt like I could never measure up to you, so instead of trying to connect with you, I pushed you away. It was immature and wrong. Thank you for being honest with me. I want you to know that I really am trying. You matter to Brian, which means you matter to me." Those words meant more than she could know. In March, Brian called with news. He and Stephanie had booked a trip. Not to the Maldives, but to Hawaii. They paid for it themselves, and they wanted to take me with them. My own room, all expenses paid. A family trip. I cried when he told me. Not sad tears, happy ones. I learned something through all of this. I learned that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when it is hard, even when it means disappointing people you love. I learned that respect is not optional in relationships. It is essential. And I learned that I am worth fighting for. That $93,000 honeymoon was the most expensive lesson I ever taught. But it was worth every penny, because it taught my son, his wife, and most importantly myself, that respect is not negotiable. I will never settle for less than I deserve ever again. And now finally, I do not have to. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who disrespected you? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Never forget your worth. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.